Hey there guys, welcome back to 5 9 for another Pokemon video. My name is Galeriot and today with me we have Liv to talk about the Pokemon battle system in Legends Arceus, which is completely different from your normal Pokemon game. So it's going to be very interesting to go over, talk a bit about it, give our thoughts, see how it'll be different in compared to normal, how effective it'll be. Will it be massively different or is it going to still remain very much similar? But before we can continue, Liv, how are you doing today?
Pretty good. I stayed up for the direct because I thought it would be interesting to see on time for once, and I was pretty impressed. I enjoyed a lot, especially the Legends Arceus stuff.
Yep.
So looking forward to this.
Definitely agree with you. So, of course, first and foremost, Legends Arceus. It doesn't seem like there's many trainer battles or any for that matter. It seems like a lot of it is fighting against the wild Pokemon and, going around just trying to look at these environments, seeking out Pokemon like it says on the website itself. You will be having to observe the Pokemon and you'll be learning how to catch them. You'll obviously do the usual stuff of weakening them in battle before you do anything, and then, of course, catching them. So, how do you feel about this observing part of the aspect of capturing Pokemon live? Of course, it's completely different to your normal Pokemon game where, wild encounter, just beat the crap out of them and then capture them. So how do you feel about this? Does this add an extra dimension, you feel? Is it a good dimension? Is it a bad dimension? Is it something unnecessary? How do you feel?
So personally, I actually kind of like the idea that you'll have to observe different Pokemon because realistically, it I guess it's similar to like if you're going out, let's say, and I guess the best example I could think of that's humane would be fishing.
Yeah.
Obviously, you're not going to just randomly throw your rod out and just hope that there are fish in the area. You're going to make sure that where you're fishing has fish
Hmm.
and like figure out should you fish with the net, should you fish with the rod, like how are you going to catch these fish? Are you going to just reach your hands in and catch them?
Yeah.
So I guess like obviously you're using Pokeballs to catch everything here, just different types. But I think it's similar, and it's as similar as you could make it, I should say, for a Pokemon game, to where
Hmm.
you need to figure out the best approach. Like I saw in the trailer, obviously, like they had some like pouncing and like rolling for the trainer. So I guess that would be the proportional example I could think of for that.
Yeah.
So I think it's a cool mechanic personally. I think especially for this sort of game, I think it makes sense for the really trying to study aspect.
Yeah, obviously, it's also because if you we looked at obviously when watching the trailer, one thing that was noted was obviously olden days and the fact that you were creating the first Pokedex. So we don't really necessarily don't know the natures or habitats or anything of these Pokemon at the
Yeah.
start of the game, right? So it's a pretty much a learning experience for the characters in the game as much as it is for us, right? In learning how these
Mhm.
Pokemon behave, trying to capture them, and so on and so forth. But also with that, we obviously start a battle by throwing a Pokeball near the Pokemon that we're fighting, and then the battle specific screen starts. And this is where things change massively. Obviously, in previous games, it obviously based on speed, it's a turn based game. You choose a move. If you go faster than the opponent Pokemon, you land a hit before it. Obviously, priority moves excluded in that equation. But in
Mhm.
this one, however, your Pokemon stats and other factors determine how many actions each Pokemon gets to take and in what order. It's very similar to other RPGs and like Final Fantasy and stuff, where it's like sort of dependent on whether you can go two times in one turn, basically, rather than just one. Like you take a move, the opponent takes a move. You take a move, the opponent takes a move. Sometimes you can go twice. Sometimes you can go once, and then the opponent goes twice. So how do you feel about that? This is something completely different compared to normal. And also on top of that, you could potentially, like, say, for example, land a move, heal, or heal and then land a move. So how do you feel about that, Liv?
So personally, I think this really only works because of the game that Legends of Arceus is.
Mm-hmm.
If we were playing, let's say, any sort of competitive Pokemon game, I think that would take out a lot of. I think the best way to put it is it would take out a lot of the potential to come back or really use specific Pokemon.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas it works in this because it's a very open world, like it's a game you're pretty much trying to conquer, not
Yes.
necessarily where you're trying to conquer another player. You're conquering the world itself. So I think it works for the type of game it is, and I think that especially if it was specifically only meant to be a beat the game rather than beat the player sort of
Yeah.
thing,
Mm-hmm.
I think that the battle system that we currently have wouldn't make a lot of sense, especially for an open world sort of game. So I think that it complements the game specifically. However, I hope that, and I assume it probably won't be, but I only even bring this up because I know that Nintendo specifically is making this. But I hope that this doesn't end up becoming the new main battle style that Nintendo goes for the Nintendo specific Pokemon games.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the time, like for example, Mystery Dungeon, the time when they didn't do the normal battle system there. Obviously, it was not a Nintendo specific Pokemon game,
Hmm.
so I think that's really the only reason I even bring up that point. But as long as it doesn't make its way into the standard type of Pokemon games, I guess is the best way to put it. I don't really have a problem with it, and I think it really complements this specific game.
I have to agree with you 100%. Like, as much as I would, as much as I appreciate a new style of a battle system, I suppose is the best way to put it. Um, I would prefer it if they remain separate. Like, oh, SRPGs, the single player RPGs, I suppose is the best way to put it. The single player
Mhm.
RPGs have their own style. Maybe it's evolving. They change it up a bit every now and then. And then, of course, you've got their mainline titles, which have the same battle system. Obviously, would like to see updates to that as well over time. Don't leave it as it
Mhm.
is, of course. Don't leave it stagnant. But yeah,
Yeah.
no, I 100% agree with you. That is one more thing as well. We do know trading is in the game. However, we don't know if there's going to be any battles with anybody else. We know there's no ranked battles. They were very clear in that statement saying
Mhm.
there's no ranked battles in Legends Arceus as well as Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl. But it's going to be very interesting to see if there's just battles in general with other players. Even, I mean, there's no trainers, we know that, for at least based on the trailer we've seen. It's only wild Pokemon as well, right? So
Mhm.
there seems to be no trainers in the area, so you're literally, this battle system seems dedicated to you against wild Pokemon, which is very interesting in itself. But along with that, we also have two new things as well, along with the four move system we already have, and that is agile style and strong style. So this is an add-on to the moves you can already do. So from what it seems like, you can like make a specific move a strong style or an agile style. And what it does is the agile style increases the action speed, which may make the user's next turn come sooner but lowers the move's power. And the strong style is effectively the other way around, where it's increasing the move's power, but your action speed is lowered, so you'll go slower. How do you feel about this, Liv? How do you think this will change up the way you play? Do you think you'll even use it here and there? Will it be like a last ditch move you might use, especially like say strong style or even the agile style if
I'll
you want to get two moves in one go, if you want to, let's say, heal up?
I'll be honest. I feel like as of personally, every single time I've like whether it's a trailer, whether it's therapy, whether even just like you explaining it just now, I feel like this is very very confused to me personally.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is something that honestly probably just won't make sense to me until I get my hands on it.
Yeah.
It seems like it's really good, but I only say that just the fact that it mentions it very specifically. It's like
Yeah.
things like a Z move or like a G Max move. They mention those very specifically as their unique sort of thing. And
Yeah.
it seems like the move gimmick for these games. It's the only reason I really put stake in it. Otherwise, I think though to get a really clear opinion, it's just something I'm gonna have to try myself
Yeah.
because
100%.
again, it just seems so vague on what it like this. I know it's like specifically lists out what it's doing, but it seems so vague on like how it to like the strategy behind it. I guess is the best way to put it,
Yeah, I'm a
which
bit.
is probably purposeful.
I definitely agree with you. It's kind of interesting because I'm looking at this, like, for example, the images that they have, right? And it's just like, oh, you apply the strong style and Floatzel just gets two moves before you can get another move in or something like that, right? But how does it apply?
Yeah.
Does it apply to the move you're doing right now, or is it to the next move? Or it's kind of weird. The action order as well, like as you said, right? I think a lot of it comes down to getting in your hands and understanding how it exactly works. Because I mean, it looks cool, but do we know what it does? Do we know how exactly it works? Not really. So it'll be very interesting to see how exactly that works.
Yeah.
Overall, the battle system seems to be very interesting, but like you mentioned, it's going to be very interesting to see whether or not they'll ever bring it to the main games. But like you said, shouldn't really come to the mainline games. It wouldn't necessarily work. Is there a way you could potentially make it come to the mainline games? So do you think there's a way, if you were a game designer, let's say for example, I know we aren't, but and it's a difficult job for sure, but is there a potential way you could see them potentially taking this and putting it into the mainline games in any way?
See, I feel like I feel like at this point, with how like set in stone the specific format that they do the competitive is, even in like different generations where they've changed up things, I think that, like, they've never really changed up the fundamental how you're playing the game. And I
Mm-hmm.
think this would be too big of a shift personally. Now, I could totally see this becoming similar to like how Pokemon has its own field at Worlds or like Pokemon Go has its own field. This could just have its own specific competitive format, but I
Yep.
don't think this could ever outright take over because it would be outright just replacing how you're fundamentally playing the game at that point. Because
100%.
even with stuff like Gigantamax, you're still at the end, you're still picking one move per turn, and it's still very much based on specific factors, even if it does change strategy behind it. This is outright changing the like how your turns are functioning, even. And I guess, I mean, you could make the case for Gigantamax, but arguably, I feel like this is just an outright different competitive format in
Yep.
its own sense, or like different play style. I think is the easiest way to put it. So I don't see it ever replacing. I could see it as its own thing, but I could never see it replacing. And even still, I think it'd be really hard to form a meta around a play style like this, in my
Yep.
opinion. But that might just be being so used to the format that we've had for years now.
Mm-hmm. No, 100% agree. Yeah, that's gonna be something I have to agree with as well. It would have to be its own format as well, kind of like how, let's say, for example, like you mentioned, like Go and Let's Go more so. I think Pokemon Let's Go is the perfect example of having a completely different like competitive meta compared to what was at the time. I think Usum was at the time, right? So they're two different like competitive scenes, and they would have to make it its own thing if they want to kind of do something with it in the future. But yeah, any final thoughts regarding the battle system in here, Liv, before we wrap up?
What I will say really quickly is I think that the biggest thing that we're gonna have to see is the actual breakdown, and I think it's gonna really just come from a day one sort of thing, as mentioned. But
Mm-hmm.
especially for things like the agile and strong styles, knowing the percentages that these will actually affect by. For example, if I'm gonna be able to raise my speed by like 1.5, but my power only drops by like 1.1 for the next turn for the agile style,
Yep.
then obviously it's gonna be really broken because it's more of a net positive than a negative.
Yes.
So it really depends on the numbers because let's say I get a buff of my speed twice as much for this turn, but my next move is cut in like a third or something.
Yeah.
Uh, it's never really something that I would think is really worth that trade off, even if I get to attack an extra turn,
Mm-hmm.
because of the fact of how much your damage is going to be decreased.
Yeah.
So I think it really just depends on the numbers. I think it's really the big thing we're gonna have to see, and then also if you even really need it, because some Pokemon might just outright be able to perform without these to begin with, and it might just
Mm-hmm.
be an extension. Or even if it, let's say there is competitive battling, maybe they'll just leave it out of the specific competitive battling. So
For sure.
that's just something that we'll really have to see. I think that while it seems like a cool feature, and I am definitely interested in it at the very least as a concept, it's something that is so vaguely defined right now for what it's going to actually provide.
Yeah.
I don't really know how I just outright don't know how to feel about it.
Mm,
But it seems like it could be interesting.
definitely agree with you. One thing I will say, adding on to your point that you just made, right, is
Mhm.
that the one thing I will say about the agile style and the strong style, while I agree with you, like we need to know more. One thing I also want to know is that does it apply to that specific move? Let's say you're going two times, like you get two moves, right, instead of just the one move if you're using agile style. Will that agile style carry forward into the next move? Will it be weaker as a result of you going two times in a row, right? Or is it just
Yeah.
applied to that first move you do? Because then in that case, the second move, if it's just the normal strength, then that's technically fine. Or you could go like agile style into strong style. Can you do that back to back kind of thing?
Yeah.
Maybe that will help out a lot more. Maybe that's a way you can do it, right? Um, and obviously that will be the best way to go about it. Then obviously going agile into strong style, right?
Mhm.
You will never be able to do the other way around because strong style will make you lose a turn, effectively, right? So yeah, very
Mhm.
interesting points there. But yeah, let us know in the comment section down below. How are you finding this new battle system based on what we've known so far? Do you think it's the right step for Pokemon to take, especially in the format of single player RPGs? Could they modify it in any way? Do you think they still need to improve on it for future games potentially? But yeah, let us know in the comment section down below. Liv, thank you so much for joining me for this video. Glad to have you on board for this one. Obviously, if you guys enjoyed this video, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and we will be bringing out more Legends Arceus and BDSP content in the coming days, as well as when the games launch. But until then, have yourselves a lovely day. We'll catch y'all next time. Peace out, everybody.
Bye.